Welcome to NTD News. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Here are today's top stories. Another landmark trade deal. President Trump's U.S., Mexico, and Canada agreement passed in the Senate today. Universities in Canada hold a minute's silence for the victims of the Iran plane crash, while the Minister of Transport wants to get to the bottom of why the incident happened. Trump's China trade deal leads to huge gains for the U.S. Find out how world markets reacted. And the first case of a viral infection from China is confirmed in Japan after a man travels to the Chinese city at the outbreak's epicenter. Find out where else it has spread. The Senate passed the U.S.-Mexico-Canada trade deal today. The agreement will help U.S. companies and their workers compete in the top two U.S. export markets.
Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell called the agreement a landmark trade deal. Senate committees made fast work of the bill that was approved on Wednesday. The USMCA is a revamp of the 1993 North American Free Trade Agreement and was originally agreed upon in early 2019. It includes bolstered protections for American workers, manufacturers, and farmers, and stricter rules of origin for automobiles and auto parts. The deal also includes Canada lowering tariffs for dairy and incentives for using high-wage manufacturing labor. The trade deal passed the Democrat-controlled House last month.
The USMCA will come into force after President Trump signs it and Canada ratifies the deal, expected to be in late January. It's a landmark day for the Trump administration, now that House Speaker Nancy Pelosi has signed 2 articles of impeachment against President Trump. The Senate is holding 2 sessions today for the initial and ceremonial steps of the impeachment trial.
Act 2 of President Trump's impeachment begins today.
They have a hoax going on over there. Let's take care of it.
Things begin when the House managers present articles of impeachment, announcing them from the well of the Senate.
We are now back to the same number of managers that were there for the impeachment and trial of Andrew Johnson. There were 7 then. There were 13 for the Clinton trial. There are now 7 again.
During the second session of the day, Chief Justice John Roberts is escorted into the Senate chamber and sworn in to do impartial justice according to the Constitution and laws.
Then the Chief Justice will swear in all of us senators. We'll pledge to rise above the petty factionalism and do justice for our institutions, for our states, and for the nation.
The senators sign the impeachment trial oath book and then issue a summons to President Trump.
We've got lengthy and difficult preparations to do, but we have a phenomenal team the Speaker has assembled, so we will be ready.
Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell says the trial is expected to start on Tuesday.
I'm confident this body can rise above short-termism and factional fever and serve the long-term best interest of our nation. We can do this, and we must.
Canada prepares to send further investigators to participate in the Iran plane crash probe and says it is sparing no effort to support the victims' families.
57 Canadians lost their lives when a Ukrainian passenger plane was shot down mistakenly by Iran shortly after takeoff in Tehran last week. Many of the 57 Canadians killed had dual nationality with Iran. Most were students, faculty, and researchers at more than a dozen universities in Canada. A memorial service was held at Western University on Wednesday to honor the 4 students it lost in the tragedy. Canada is determined to know how and why the incident happened.
This government will not rest until we get answers. Answers those grieving families deserve.
Garneau said that 2 Canadian investigators visited the crash site and were set to examine the wreckage on Wednesday. Canada's Transportation Safety Board is ready to deploy a further team to participate in the analysis of data from the black boxes and voice recorders. Iran has not yet said when this will take place. Investigators will tackle questions such as whether the missile was launched accidentally or on purpose. Another important question the probe will look at is why Iran's airspace remained open at the time and why airlines continued to fly from the Tehran airport. The plane was struck down amid heightened tensions in Tehran after Iran's missile attack on Iraqi bases, housing U.S. troops earlier that day. Iran said it attacked the bases in retaliation for the U.S. killing of an Iranian general days earlier. Canada is working to repatriate the victims' remains.
Foreign ministers from Canada, Britain, Ukraine, Sweden, and Afghanistan each lit a candle today for those who died when Iran shot down the airliner. The 5 nations that had citizens on the plane were meeting in London to coordinate their response. World markets react after the U.S. and China signed Phase 1 of the trade deal. The agreement brought big wins for markets in the U.S., while world markets varied.
World financial markets quickly reacted to the signing of Phase 1, the first of 2 sections of the U.S.-China trade deal. Asian stocks are oscillating between positive and negative territory, and China is experiencing a dip in its biggest stocks. In Europe, stocks are struggling, but the European Central Bank published a largely upbeat set of meeting minutes ahead of a speech from its chief. In the U.S., the S&P 500 opened at a record high and crossed 3,300 for the first time. Likewise, the Dow and the Nasdaq opened at new highs, while Morgan Stanley wrapped up big bank earnings on a strong note, topping analyst expectations.
Phase 1 of the deal will reduce tariffs on both sides, increase China's purchases of U.S. goods, and require China to make structural changes to its economy.
White House officials claiming a victory.
Exactly right. President Trump's strategy was exactly right. I think tough tariffs brought him to the negotiating table. I think the tough tariffs hurt their economy and made them much more amenable to a good deal in this country.
While critics argue the deal is not good enough.
So this Phase 1 deal is an extreme disappointment to me and to millions and millions of Americans who want to see us make China play fair.
But others refer to the bottom line. It calms down an 18-month trade war that has slowed global growth.
At the very least, this is a truce. And at the very least, it means there will not be an escalation of tariffs in 2020. And so that's very good news for investors, for businesses, and for workers.
Some businesses are cautiously optimistic.
We work with both Chinese companies and U.S. importers, so Chinese exporters, U.S. importers, and also U.S. exporters to China. So all of them are watching this very closely. And certainly the reduction in tariffs helps both the U.S. importers because they have to pay those tariffs. So yes, we are optimistic that it will work and that China is serious about making it work. And
whether China will abide by its word remains a big question.
We've seen this over and over again. China agrees to something and they don't do it.
Ultimately, the hammer that Trump holds over China if they start cheating on this deal is that the tariffs will come back. And those tariffs, have hurt the Chinese economy, and they've hurt the United States, but they've also hurt China. And so the only real leverage Trump has, in my opinion, is the threat of tariffs being reimposed.
Moore says a Phase 2 deal is unlikely before the November election. Likewise, President Trump has said much of the success of Phase 2 will depend on the success of Phase 1, which will be closely watched in the next few months.
We will definitely need to keep an eye on what happens in the next quarter, next few months, because if purchases are not being made by China, if enforcement is not strong enough, then we could start hearing some concerns from the U.S. industries.
The agreement comes complete with a dispute settlement and enforcement mechanism, which takes about 90 days to complete. If China fails to adhere to the deal, the U.S. can reimpose the withdrawn tariffs.
Model Gigi Hadid arrived at a Manhattan court today for jury duty in the rape trial of Harvey Weinstein. The trial is expected to go for 2 months.
More than 100 potential jurors were expected to report for the case as lawyers strive to choose 12 impartial New Yorkers to decide the former film mogul's fate. The potential jurors who have passed an initial round of pre-screening include supermodel Gigi Hadid, who said she had met Weinstein before but could nonetheless be fair. Weinstein, 67, has pleaded not guilty to charges of assaulting 2 women in New York and faces life in prison if convicted on the most serious charge, predatory sexual assault. Weinstein's trial kicked off on January 6th and is expected to last up to 2 months.
Russia's ruling party today unanimously backed President Vladimir Putin's surprise choice for prime minister, a man with almost no political profile. But why was he picked?
Russia has chosen a new prime minister after President Vladimir Putin proposed a wave of constitutional changes that could extend his grip on power after leaving the presidency. Former Premier Dmitry Medvedev and his cabinet stepped down on Wednesday, making way for Mikhail Mishustin, the 53-year-old head of the tax service. He has little public profile except having been known to play ice hockey with Putin and had not been spoken of as a potential candidate. These factors are seemingly part of Putin's strategy to open up opportunity to diminish the powers of the presidency and beef up those of the prime minister. Analysts have called Mishustin a technocratic placeholder. He will inevitably be viewed as a possible successor to a shrunken presidency, as will members of his cabinet, many of whom are expected to be new to government. And essentially that would give Putin the options of taking on an enhanced role as prime minister after 2024 when he's obliged to leave the presidency, pursuing a new role as head of the state council, or even becoming speaker of a new supercharged parliament. Critics have long accused Putin, a former KGB officer, of plotting to stay on in some capacity after his term ends, in a bid to wield power over the world's largest nation and one of its two biggest nuclear powers. Putin has ruled Russia for 2 decades, and for many he's seen as a welcome source of stability. But others complain that he's been in power for too long, that their pensions and standard of living are being steadily eroded, and that poverty is widespread and healthcare poor. Putin says the new constitutional proposals should be put to a referendum.
Coming up, Hong Kong is considering giving its police more and different weapons to combat protesters. That's after the city is accused of massive police brutality. See the public reaction after the break.
When you look at TV networks in America, a soundbite and fight-it-out culture prevails on news and commentary programs. As a Canadian, I'm fascinated with America, and I wanted to offer American thought leaders an opportunity to share their thoughts in a deep dive format, where we can explore their ideas together. And so American Thought Leaders was born. The world's most brilliant thinkers believed that open discourse was the key to greatness. However, all around the world, we see that discourse is being stifled and political agendas have subverted media. The Epoch Times launched its Global Thought Leaders program to bring back this great tradition of free thought. As the host of American Thought Leaders, every week I interview some of the most intriguing minds on the most pressing issues of our time. Be sure to check out our new episodes every week.
Japan confirmed the first case of infection from the new China coronavirus in a statement today. The virus has killed 1 person so far and prompted a travel alert from the U.S. State Department.
Japan has confirmed a patient there tested positive for the new China coronavirus. Its health ministry said the man in his 30s had recently traveled to the Chinese city that's thought to be the epicenter of the outbreak. Chief Cabinet Secretary Yoshihide Suga released this statement on Thursday.
It was confirmed yesterday that 1 person who had stayed in Wuhan City tested positive for the new coronavirus, and this is the first case in Japan. I heard this person has already been discharged. We will steadily implement quarantine, and will keep dealing with it in a thorough manner.
So far, 1 person has died from the strain. The World Health Organization has said it could spread and has warned hospitals worldwide.
The new strain of coronavirus originated in Wuhan, the largest city in central China. Thailand confirmed its first case of infection a few days ago. The outbreak is causing worry across Asia just as the Lunar New Year celebrations begin. Hong Kong's security minister yesterday said police will look into any method for handling ongoing protests more effectively, causing fears that police will soon be armed with more weapons to use against protesters.
On Wednesday, a lawmaker in a legislative council meeting asked Security Secretary John Lee Ka-cho if electroshock devices were being considered for deployment. He did not deny it. Chairman of the Junior Police Officers Association says these stun weapons are less lethal and the effects on suspects are temporary. Director of Hong Kong Human Rights Monitor warns electroshock devices can be deadly if used on someone with an underlying health condition. Amnesty International also called for tighter restrictions on such weapons, adding they should only be used in situations where police would otherwise consider using firearms. The global head of Human Rights Watch, Kenneth Roth, was denied entry to Hong Kong on Sunday. He was expected to launch the report there that covers the global human rights situation, but features China prominently.
Our point is that when police respond, whether to violence or to peaceful protest, they have to do it within the rules on legitimate use of force. We've seen severe beating of protesters, which is not an appropriate response to peaceful or violent protesters.
On Thursday, Hong Kong Chief Executive Carrie Lam rejected claims of police brutality. She appeared in a question and answer session in the city's Legislative Council, and the opposition politicians urged the government to respond to the demands of protesters.
The story of a college student effectively starving to death in China has sparked public outrage against the country's authorities. It also prompted a heated debate on poverty, which the ruling Communist Party pledged to eliminate by 2020.
This 24-year-old from China was less than 50 pounds when she died in a hospital this Monday. Wu Huayan lived on 3 pennies a day, eating only rice and chilies for years to save money for her brother's medical bills. Years of malnutrition put her into the hospital with heart problems in October of last year. Her story of poverty shocked China, provoking outrage on social media against authority for failing to help her. The ruling Communist Party previously vowed to eliminate extreme poverty by 2020. China is the world's second largest economy, but a 2018 report from the International Monetary Fund said it is also one of the world's most unequal countries. While in 2017, the National Bureau of Statistics reported that over 30 million Chinese citizens are living under the poverty line of $1.9 a day. The student came from one of China's poorest provinces, Guizhou. In recent years, Chinese media reported several corruption cases where officials embezzled millions of dollars of poverty relief fund. Penny Zhou, NTD News.
Up next, an eco-friendly fashion trade fair in Berlin is changing the fashion industry. See how used coffee grounds, plastic waste from the ocean, and industrial waste are all materials that can be turned into fashion when we return.
I have traveled all over the world to 50 countries now, and I have never seen a production any better than this, anywhere.
It's absolutely out of this world.
It's blown away my expectations.
It was just a superior performance that truly could bridge the world through music and dance.
Startling and breathtaking. We haven't had quite an experience like that in all the years that I've lived here, so it was special for us.
I think that I learned more in this performance than I actually do in a whole week of school.
The beautiful costumes and people just float. The choreography is incredible and the storyline, beautiful, beautiful.
It's so beautiful. I'm getting teary-eyed watching. It's very moving. You feel it. You're feeling the show.
It's like a mini vacation that transported me into another place, into another world, into another culture.
When I came here tonight, I felt very dejected about the human race, about everything going on in this world. And during the performance, I just felt now there is hope for each of us individually, as well as for all of us collectively.
Shenyun was more breathtaking, more heart-wrenchingly beautiful, more amazing than I had expected. It's very difficult to put into words, actually. You just have to come see it.
Fashion for the environmentally conscientious. Jackets made from ocean plastics, shoes made out of recycled materials, and t-shirts made with coffee grounds are some of the products being shown at the Sustainable Fashion Trade Fair in Berlin. The Neonit Fashion Trade Fair in Berlin is showcasing fashion that's sustainable and environmentally friendly. These jackets, for example, are made from plastics that have been removed from the sea outside of Spain.
There is so much plastic in the seas, especially on the coast of Spain. So we said that this needs to be removed somehow.
He adds that normally fishermen catch a lot of plastic in their nets, which they throw back into the ocean. But now his company EcoAlf pays them for that plastic and turns it into yarn, which can then be made into clothes. Another big area of waste is coffee grounds. German high-end fashion company Like a Bird has a new product, a t-shirt made from a mix of cotton and fiber from coffee grounds. Coffee fiber is a waste material from the coffee industry.
The special thing about it is that it has a natural UV protection. It acts like a deodorant and it protects the skin. And of course it is recyclable, which is very important for us.
Portuguese company Lemon Jelly is showing its range of shoes made from industrial plastic waste. One boot has a near-field communication chip. When you hold a smartphone to the heel of the shoe, a website will open that explains where the materials for the shoes originated.
We have the technology ready. We are able to do it. We are able to produce recycled shoes with good quality and with good design that are attractive to people, and people are wanting these also.
The Neonit Fashion Fair opened on January 14th and runs until January 16th. France's digital tax is at the center of a dispute with the U.S. It aims at internet companies like Facebook, Amazon, and Google. And France's government says it will generate $550 million every year. So how does the tax work? Our French correspondent David Vives reports.
Late last year, the U.S. administration threatened to increase tariffs on up to 100% of French goods, including wines and handbags. This is retaliation for a new tax the French government created last year. With this tax, big tech companies like Google, Facebook, and Amazon have to pay a 3% tax on their revenue in France. Internet giants often set up their European headquarters in regions with low tax, such as Ireland or Bermuda, and shift money seamlessly across borders within the EU. To understand how the digital tax works, we asked Institute Molinari think tank director Nicolas Marquis.
It was suggested that this tax would be paid for by businesses, which would have corrected their taxation. In reality, it is more complex. Businesses collect the tax and pass it on to their consumers.
Last year, Amazon declared that the 3% tax will be passed on in its transactions. This means it will be paid for by their French customers. According to Marquis, as the internet giants are leaders of digital, it's very easy for those companies to choose how they will pay this tax and who will pay it. The 3% tax will apply to the French revenues of about 30 companies, mostly from the U.S. A U.S. government report focuses on determining whether or not the digital tax is discriminatory. In other words, it has to prove that the tax is specifically targeting U.S. companies. According to the report, the wording used by the French administration refers to all digital companies, and not once does it specify American companies. At the same time, the French government's website displays an image of the big tech companies alongside its explanation of the tax. And the only time Google or Facebook was named in the creation of the tax was in the French Assembly by the left-wing political party La France Insoumise. According to fiscal lawyer Jean-Philippe Delceau, the digital tax pushes a narrative that blames U.S. companies.
The digital tax is the only tool the French politicians have found to compete with American companies. It's a populist promise. They make American companies look bad, and this is a narrative aiming to trigger bad feelings from French people.
U.S. Treasury Secretary Stephen Mnuchin and his French counterpart Bruno Le Maire are trying to find a solution before meeting at the World Economic Forum in Davos next week. David Vives, NTD News.
Up next, a museum in New York turned salad making into an artistic exhibit. Find out what visitors are saying about it after the break.
Our investigative reporters at the Epoch Times have spent 18 months uncovering the biggest political scandal in modern history. We connected the dots around Spygate, the actions by Obama-era officials against Trump's 2016 presidential campaign. Join me on Declassified as we bring you up-to-date developments on this unfolding scandal.
Darren Bader's edible exhibition debuted on Wednesday at the Manhattan Whitney Museum. The exhibit welcomes attendees to witness and participate in turning the fruits and vegetables on display into a salad.
The exhibit begins with the display of fruits and vegetables like bananas, fennel, and squash placed on top of maple pedestals in the Whitney's gallery. The edible art pieces are then taken to the kitchen to become a large bowl of salad. Attendees can view the salad-making process on a projection screen before it's wheeled out and served to the public in cups.
So I think one could definitely connect this to things like climate change. Whether that's kind of what the work is about, I think is up to any one viewer and what they take away from it.
One attendee says he appreciated the group experience.
We've lost our relationship with food by it being too fast and too easy. We need to get back to sharing it with the community, sharing it with ourselves. Good food, food from great sources, and you know where it's coming from, prepared with love. To fill you up with love and take care of who you are.
The New York-based artist Darren Bader is no stranger to challenging artistic conventions. His exhibition, Fruit and Vegetable Salad, will be on display at the Whitney Museum from January 15th to February 17th on select days during the week.
A Belgian zoo started the new year on a high note with the birth of a female giraffe calf on Sunday morning.
In a video released by the Royal Zoological Society of Antwerp, the mother giraffe, called Barbie, was seen giving birth in her enclosure under the watch of two other giraffes. Barbie gave birth while standing, as giraffes do, literally dropping her new calf into life from about 2 meters. Born after a 15-month gestation period, the calf was born at Plankendale Zoo, a park located in a Flemish city of Mechelen, 30 kilometers north of the country's capital, Brussels. Caretakers named the almost 2-meter-high calf Valai as a tribute to her father, Salai, which died last year. All animals to be born at Plankendale Zoo this year will have a name starting with V.
And that's all for now. Thanks for tuning in. Join us again tonight. I'm Tiffany Meyer.